It was one of those nights where the rain just wouldn't let up. The kind that soaked you the second you stepped outside. Business was slow, with only a handful of orders, and I was ready to call it a night. Just as I was about to clock out, the phone dinged with one last delivery, somewhere in a quiet, out-of-the-way neighborhood. I glanced at the address, 42 Willow Drive. Never heard of it. I've been doing this job long enough to know the area like the back of my hand. But this house? It didn't ring any bells. It was at the end of a cul-de-sac, the kind of place that looked like it had been forgotten by time. Maybe the rain made it worse, but the whole area felt wrong. Still, it was my last order. I just wanted to get it done, get home, and dry off. I pushed down the uneasy feeling in my gut, grabbed the pizza, and drove out, hoping it'd be quick. Just in and out like always. Besides, it's probably just some recluse who doesn't get out much. The rain hammered against my windshield as I turned into the cul-de-sac. The houses here were spaced farther apart, the kind of place where silence seemed to cling to everything. My headlights cut through the downpour, illuminating the last house at the end of the road. That's when I saw them, the symbols. They were crudely painted on the front door and along the side of the house, barely visible through the rain, but unmistakably strange. Circles, slashes, something that looked like a twisted figure eight. I couldn't place them. Definitely nothing you'd find in a kid's chalk drawing. They made me pause, my fingers tightening on the steering wheel as my stomach twisted with unease. But I reminded myself it was just some weird art, probably nothing to worry about. People get bored, right? I grabbed the pizza and stepped out, the rain instantly soaking through my jacket. Each step toward the house felt heavier than it should have, like something was pressing against me. Still, I was here to do my job, so I pushed the feeling aside and knocked. After a long moment, the door creaked open, and a woman appeared in the doorway. She was strange, unnaturally pale, like she hadn't seen the sun in years, with wide, dark eyes that never seemed to blink. She gave me a small, unsettling smile. "Come inside," she said, her voice soft but firm. "I need to use my phone to transfer the payment. I don't have any cash." I hesitated. Every instinct screamed at me to leave, but it was pouring and I wanted to get this over with. So, against my better judgment, I nodded and stepped inside, hoping this would be quick. As soon as I stepped inside, the door slammed shut behind me with a heavy thud, sending a chill down my spine. The air was different in here, thick, almost suffocating, like the house was holding its breath. The dim light barely illuminated the room, but I could make out just enough to feel my heart race. The woman disappeared into a hallway without a word, leaving me standing there, clutching the pizza box like it was some kind of shield. That's when I noticed the strange items scattered around the room. A small, makeshift altar sat in the corner, surrounded by half-melted candles, their flickering flames casting twisted shadows on the walls. And those symbols I'd seen outside, they were everywhere, scrawled in dark, uneven strokes across the walls and floor. I couldn't shake the feeling that they weren't just for decoration. They meant something bad. I took a step back, trying to steady my breath, the urge to bolt creeping up on me. But before I could even think of leaving, I heard it, the soft, incoherent murmuring. My eyes darted to the far corners of the room, and that's when I saw them. Figures, cloaked in dark robes, emerging from the shadows like they had been there the whole time, waiting for me. Their voices grew louder, chanting in a language I couldn't understand, each word making the air feel heavier, thicker. They moved slowly, closing in around me, their faces hidden beneath their hoods. I was trapped. Panic surged through me as I realized what was happening. This wasn't just some strange old house. I had walked straight into the middle of something sinister, a ritual, and I was the unwilling participant. My heart was pounding in my chest as the chanting grew louder, the cloaked figures closing in. I spun around, making a desperate dash for the front door. My hands fumbled with the handle, yanking it with all the strength I could muster, but it wouldn't move. It felt like it was glued shut, sealed by something far more sinister than just a deadbolt. Before I could try again, the woman reappeared. Only now, her face was different, warped. Her smile stretched unnaturally wide, and her eyes dark pits that seemed to swallow the dim light. She didn't look human anymore. "You can't leave," she said, her voice low and unnervingly calm. "This house, it's been hungry for so long. Starving, really. You see, it was built on something dark, long before anyone lived here. Every few years we have to feed it, sacrifices to keep it alive. Strangers like you." I backed away, every muscle in my body screaming for me to run, but there was nowhere to go. The cloaked figures were closing in, their chanting reaching a fever pitch. I could feel something, an energy thick and heavy, pushing down on me like the house itself was alive, and I was trapped inside its grip. In a surge of adrenaline, I grabbed a nearby chair and hurled it at the nearest window. The glass shattered, and without thinking, I dove through the opening, ignoring the sting of glass cutting into my skin. I hit the ground hard, rain soaking me instantly, but I didn't stop. I scrambled to my feet, sprinting back to my car, my breath coming in ragged gasps. As I sped away, I glanced in the rearview mirror. The house, once decayed and broken down, now looked pristine, almost new, like the ritual had restored it. The realization hit me like a punch to the gut. I had escaped, but I wasn't the first. How many others had been trapped there, lost to whatever curse held that place? My phone buzzed on the seat beside me. I picked it up, half expecting some message from the house itself. Instead, it was the delivery app, showing the order still marked as pending, like the job was unfinished. Or maybe it was waiting for me to come back. I hit the gas harder. I was never going back.
It was a slow night. I'd been staring at the pizza place's flickering neon sign for the past hour, waiting for something to pop up on my app. Being a delivery driver wasn't glamorous, but it paid the bills, mostly. Finally, a notification buzzed on my phone. New order. About time. The customer had left a note in the special instructions. Use my delivery tracker app for the route. It's more accurate than GPS. Tech nerds always had something weird going on, so I didn't think much of it. I downloaded the app and plugged in the address. Seemed pretty straightforward at first. The app was sleek, and I could see a little dummy moving through the streets in real time. The city streets were quiet, almost too quiet for a Friday night. I turned onto the main avenue, following the app's directions. But then something odd happened. It rerouted me, not through the usual busy streets, but into a side road I'd never taken before. I hesitated for a second, but hey, maybe it knew a shortcut. I shrugged, turned onto the empty road, and kept driving. I kept driving, trying to shake off the uneasy feeling creeping up my spine. The tracker app pinged again, rerouting me. The next turn was even more unexpected, leading me deeper into a residential area I didn't recognize. I'd lived in this city for 3 years and had never been down these streets. But the app insisted I was on track. Another ping. I glanced at my phone. The screen flashed with a new route, this one leading me away from the familiar city grid and into quieter, darker roads. The houses started thinning out, replaced by empty lots and old, crumbling warehouses. My fingers tightened around the steering wheel as I took another strange turn. Where was this app taking me? I tried calling the customer. Maybe the app was glitching or I'd input the wrong address. No answer. Instead, I got a text, a cold, automated message. Please stay en route. You are almost there. Almost where? I sent a message back asking if I had the right address, but the only reply I got was another ping from the app, urging me to take the next left. My gut was telling me to turn around, but the app kept saying I was on track. I kept driving deeper into the outskirts. The streetlights grew more sparse until there were none at all. My headlights were the only thing cutting through the darkness now. The app pinged again, and this time, the location it showed on the map was a barren industrial lot, surrounded by twisted metal fences and abandoned buildings. My heart raced as the city felt miles away, swallowed up by the shadows of this eerie wasteland. Something wasn't right, but I was already too far in to turn back. I pulled into the lot, my headlights flickering over rusted fences and crumbling walls. The app dinged. You've reached your final destination. But there was nothing here. No house, no business, just a graveyard of old machinery and graffiti-covered buildings. I cut the engine, the sudden silence almost deafening. The only sound was the ticking of my cooling engine. I stared at the app on my phone, hoping for more instructions, but the screen was blank. Then a notification popped up. Asterisk, they're watching. Asterisk, my heart skipped a beat. I glanced around the lot, scanning the shadows for any sign of movement, but everything was still. Too still. I was about to call the customer again when I saw them. Figures, barely visible, stepping out from behind the buildings. There were 4, maybe 5 of them moving slowly toward me. I froze, gripping the steering wheel. My brain screamed at me to drive, but I couldn't. I couldn't take my eyes off them. One of them stepped forward, closer than the others, holding something in his hand. The dim light from my headlights reflected off the screen of his phone. My stomach twisted as I realized it looked just like the app on my phone. My delivery tracker. The dots, the route, everything. They'd been following me the entire time, watching as I got closer and closer to. What? Their trap. The man with the phone looked up, his eyes locking onto mine. The others moved in behind him, silent and deliberate. My phone buzzed again. Another notification flashed across the screen. You can't leave. Panic surged through me. I slammed the car into reverse, tires screeching as I tore out of the lot, the figures fading into the darkness behind me. But the dread stayed with me. I wasn't sure if I'd escaped, or if this was just the beginning. My phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Notification after notification flashed on the screen, each more terrifying than the last. You can't leave. Turn back. Asterisk, we're waiting. Asterisk, my hands were shaking as I swerved through the maze of old factories. The figures closing in behind me. They were getting closer. Too close. I barely managed to throw the car into drive as one of them reached for my door handle. I hit the gas, my tires screeching as I sped down the narrow alley, the headlights cutting through the darkness. My heart pounded in my chest, the relentless buzzing of my phone making everything feel unreal. The old factories whipped past me in a blur, but the further I drove, the quieter it became. My phone finally stopped buzzing, the screen going dark. I glanced down just as one final message popped up. Next time you won't be so lucky. I floored the gas, not stopping until I reached the city limits. But the feeling didn't leave me. They knew where I was. They were still watching. And next time they'd be waiting.
It was nearing midnight when the order came in. I was the only driver still on the clock as usual. Most of the guys avoided these late shifts, but I didn't mind. The tips were better and it was always quiet. As I looked at the address, something about it seemed familiar. Old Whitaker Road. That's when it clicked. The Whitaker House. People in town loved to spread ghost stories about it. Supposedly, it was haunted. Some tragedy decades ago. A fire. A family never seen again. The house had been abandoned ever since, or so the stories went. I didn't believe in all that, though. Haunted houses, curses. It was just small-town gossip. Still, when I mentioned the address to the guys, they all gave me these looks, like I was signing up for something I shouldn't. "I'm not going near that place," one of them said, shaking his head. The others nodded in agreement, acting like this was common sense. I shrugged it off. A house was a house, and this one had ordered a large pepperoni. Someone had to deliver it. Might as well be me. The drive out to the Whitaker house was longer than I expected. The further I got from town, the quieter it became. The houses along the road started to disappear, replaced by dense trees and fields. The streetlights became fewer until they vanished altogether, leaving the road in near total darkness. My headlights were the only thing cutting through the night, and the quiet was starting to get under my skin. When I finally pulled up to the house, it looked exactly like something out of one of those ghost stories. The place was old, practically falling apart, with peeling paint and windows so dusty you couldn't see inside. The yard was overgrown, weeds creeping up the sides of the house. I noticed the front door was slightly open, just enough to make me pause. No lights were on inside. I parked the car and grabbed the pizza, trying to shake off the uneasy feeling crawling up my spine. It was just a house, an empty, old house, probably some teenagers messing around. I walked up to the door and knocked, my fist echoing in the silence. No answer. I knocked again, a little harder this time. Still nothing. "All right then," I muttered. Following protocol, I set the pizza down on the doorstep and turned to head back to the car. But as soon as I stepped away, a cold gust of wind hit me out of nowhere, sharp enough to make me shiver. And then, faint but clear, I heard it, my name. "Alex." I froze. The wind had stopped, but the voice, if I'd heard it at all, lingered. I glanced around, but there was no one, just the empty house and the dark woods behind it. My heart pounded in my chest. I stood there, frozen in place, my pulse hammering in my ears. It had to be a trick of the wind or my mind playing games with me. There was no way I actually heard my name. But then, the whispers came again. This time louder, clearer. "Alex!" They seemed to float from inside the house, like someone was just out of sight, beckoning me. My throat tightened, and every instinct screamed at me to leave. But my feet wouldn't move. I took a step closer to the door. I didn't know why. Maybe I thought I'd see someone inside. Maybe I just wanted to prove it was nothing. I leaned forward and peered through the crack in the door. The inside of the house was pitch black, but the smell hit me right away. Old, stale, like it hadn't been lived in for decades. The air was thick, almost suffocating. I hesitated, but then I heard it again. My name, drawn out in a raspy whisper. It was unmistakable this time, coming from somewhere deep inside. I gripped the door handle, pushing it open just enough to slip inside. My flashlight barely cut through the darkness. The beam flickered over dusty furniture, cobwebs stretching across the ceiling, and what looked like old, faded photographs on the walls. Each step I took was slow, deliberate, my heart thudding in my chest. "Hello," I called out, my voice sounding too loud in the thick silence. No answer, just that suffocating quiet, and then the unmistakable sound of footsteps. Soft, deliberate, coming from upstairs. I froze again, the flashlight shaking in my hand. I knew I should leave. Every part of me wanted to turn around, run back to the car, and never look back. But something, curiosity, or maybe something darker, kept me rooted to the spot. I took a deep breath and moved forward, deeper into the house, feeling like I was stepping into a trap. The whispers followed me as I moved deeper into the house, growing more frantic, almost like someone was begging for help. "Alex? Please!" Their tone shifted, becoming desperate, tugging at something inside me. I could feel eyes on me, shadows flickering at the edge of my vision, but every time I turned, there was nothing. The air was icy now, cold enough that I could see my breath hanging in front of me in the dim light. Drawn by the sound of footsteps, I climbed the stairs, each creak echoing through the house. At the top, a door stood slightly open, and beyond it, the room felt even colder. My hands trembled as I pushed it open. Inside, the temperature dropped further, making me shiver uncontrollably. That's when I saw it. An old, tattered newspaper lying on the floor, yellowed with age. I picked it up, the headline glaring up at me, "Family Tragedy at Whitaker House. All lost in mysterious fire." As soon as I read the words, the whispers stopped. Silence, a suffocating, oppressive quiet, and then cold fingers gripped my shoulder. I spun around, heart pounding, but no one was there, just the empty room. But I wasn't alone. I never had been. They were here watching, waiting, and they wanted me to stay. Forever.